Whoa! Ooh, I don't feel so good. Hi, this is the wrong hero. Welcome to Cafe Cabaret. You know, this ship is sort of like my career in politics. A lot of ups and downs. Actually, that's not true. I have no career in politics. In fact, I don't feel very good about this presentation because I don't really like the title, but I committed to it a long time ago, before I even knew what it was going to be about, and so I'm sort of stuck with it now, and it's called Sins of the Grandfathers. That's right, Sins of the Grandfathers. And, well, that's what it's about, basically. At least that's what it's going to be about. You see, I will it to be about this topic. Well, here's something interesting. Every single ad in the Super Bowl was based on some sort of dumb animal, be it a bear, pig, cow, dog, or supermodel, said Kathleen Madigan. Pretty tart tongue on this little lady, wouldn't you say? Yeah, we could get into the red skeleton mode. Pretty tart tongue on this little lady now, don't you think? It just occurred to me that Bullwinkle is actually the voice of Red Skelton. Hey, there's a real insight for you. One which, when I cross the bar and meet my heavenly Father, I can regale him with, "So, Mr. Wrong Hero, what makes you think you're so smart?" "Well, Bullwinkle is actually the voice of Red Skelton." "Wow. You know, I didn't even know that." So, anyhow, what else has happened? Well, Herb Cain died. He was the fellow who invented the word beatnik. That was some time ago, actually. You see, I'm just frightfully behind the curve here, but, well, I'm doing my best. I'm trying to catch up. We're in February now, February of '97, which is, I guess, a nice change of pace. And even though it's already August. Well, we'll try to see if we're no more than 6 months behind by the time we finish this. Well, what I wanted to talk to you about is the big scandals. Um, you know, Bill Clinton isn't a grandfather yet, although biologically he certainly could be one. So let's talk a little bit about the sins of Bill Clinton. Well, I don't know. I don't really care to. He's my guy, see? And I ain't gonna dig up no dirt on him. But he has plenty of friends who are willing to sort of defend him in a half-hearted way, which actually makes him seem more culpable of wrongdoing and variegated peccadillos than he actually is. For example, James Carville said of the Paula Corbin-Jones scandal, "Drag $100 bills through trailer parks. There's no telling what you'll find." A phrase which on the face of it has a strangely poetic quality to it. As a matter of fact, it could almost be a sentence from my ongoing epic poem. Drag $100 bills through trailer parks. No telling what you'll find. There's a certain internal, almost sprung rhythm to it, although, of course, unlike sprung rhythm, it doesn't really rely upon alliteration. But there's an interesting sort of duel of fricatives, like drag $100 bills through trailer parks. There's no telling what you'll find. You can just see Bill Cosby saying this. Drag $100 bills through trailer parks. suffers, says Richard Goldstone, when it shrinks from public acknowledgement of gross injustice. Let's just hope that Billy Boy isn't guilty of all the stuff they done been saying he is. Because, you see, this is like the first president we've had that I feel really comfortable with, and now they want to get rid of him. What kind of justice is this? Is it justice or is it just us? I ask you. So, yeah, I mean, if they let him get away with murder just because he's the prexy, as they used to call him, God knows why. I don't want to be president just because there's the off chance that I might be referred to as the prexy or the prez or some equally vulgar abbreviation of my proper title. If I become president, I will have my name legally changed to His Royal Highness George Washington I. That way they can call me President His Royal Highness George Washington I. It can happen here. You know, Sinclair Lewis sort of began running out of steam right after Elmer Gantry. Maybe he was drinking too much or having too much sex, I don't know. It is true that, you know, alcohol and overstimulation of that kind can greatly rob a writer of his abilities. You can dissipate your abilities and squander them. And anyhow, right after about 1932 or thereabouts, Sinclair Lewis began sort of losing his edge, so to speak, and he wrote, "It Can't Happen Here," in 1935, which was later made into a successful stage production, and it was a topic very much in the news, a very political topic. The notion that a fascist dictator, sort of a precursor of the Christian right as well, named Buzz Windrip, would take over in the United States. After, of course, having been duly elected president. Now, Sinclair Lewis was fresh from a trip to Russia, and, of course, Nazi Germany was very much in everybody's mind, and I think his wife, Dorothy Thompson, was also instrumental in bringing these facts to his attention. So he wrote this novel, which, to tell you the truth, wasn't really very good. Well, as a matter of fact, it wasn't good at all. I mean, it was just a piece of hack work, a potboiler. See, that's the problem with these novelists. They don't know when to stop. Anyway, the refrain to "It Can't Happen Here," somewhere in the middle of the book, when someone keeps saying, "It can't happen here," the response was, "The hell it can't!" So, anyway, a lengthy, digressive, sort of roundabout display of gratuitous erudition, and the punchline was pretty feeble, I must confess. Well, as Elie Wiesel says, or Eli Wiesel, our memory becomes a shield for the future. Yes. Our memory becomes a shield for the future. How interesting. Our memory becomes a shield for the... What did I say? Now, here's something interesting. You know, in English, since it's such a polyglot tongue, and since there are so many Americans who come from differentiated backgrounds, names don't necessarily have the same type of meaning. People don't look at your name and say, oh, that must mean his ancestor was a blacksmith, or, that must mean he must be Anders, son of Anderson. No, they don't do that. But in other countries, names are, the population is relatively homogeneous, and the language itself too is universally understood, and it's not necessarily a polyglot of other tongues. And so, in German, people have the weirdest names, like Faul, Herr Faul, which means lazy. It'd be like calling someone Mr. Lazy, or Herr Fett, Fat, Mr. Fat. Hey, it's Mr. Fat! Hey! Get out of my way! I'm Mr. Fat! Well, I'm Mr. Lazy, I ain't budging. What happens when an immovable object means the irresistible force? Bully! Well, now we're Mr. in the hospitals. What else they got? Mr. Herr Dreckman, Filth Man. Hey, it's Filth Man! Filth Man! Why is everybody running? I'll try it again. Filth Man! Jeez, nobody wants to be around me. Huh. Herr Dumm, which means stupid. It's Mr. Stupid. I may appear to be erudite, but I'm reading this off of a telescreen because I'm Mr. Stupid. Can't even find a rhyme because I'm Mr. Stupid. Let's see, Herr Murder, which means murder. Mr. Murder. Geez, I just like Mr. Stupid. No, I killed Mr. Stupid and took his identity because I'm Mr. Murderer. I'm so smart that I commit the perfect crime. And you know what? I can even find a rhyme because I'm Mr. Murderer. Yes, but you can't find a rhythm. It doesn't scan. Well, I'm too busy killing people to study poetic diction, chum. And now I can use my normal voice. My fiendish normal voice. Now I'm no longer masquerading. Yes, men do call me Mr. Murder. Was there something you wish to consult me concerning? Let us step into this dark alley if there was something that you wished to speak with me about. No? Well, very well then. Be gone with you. I have no time for this. I am busy plotting. So, wow. Mr. Stupid, hey, I thought I killed you. Oh, let's see, what else do they got? Herr Brauthuhn, roast chicken. Hey, it's Mr. Roast Chicken. He's the hit of any party. Can I have a leg? Have a whole leg. Let's see, Herr Schwein, Mr. Pig. Mr. Pig, Mr. Pig. Let's see, and finally, Herr Kotz, Vomit. Mr. Vomit, ta! Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean. Oh no, it's my nemesis, Mr. Clean. What are you doing today, Mr. Vomit? Well, I'm hoping to destroy Mr. Clean so that Vomit may rule. So, I'm also hoping to make everybody in the entire country drink alcoholic beverages in excess. And then I, Mr. Vomit, will rule. So, anyway. See, it's not like I don't want to be funny. It's just that I have so few opportunities to make you laugh. Laugh! becoming obsolete. You 40-year-olds out there, isn't that the feeling you get sometimes when you wake up in the morning and you look into the mirror and you see yourself in the glass and you peer at yourself through slitted eyes and say, in an undertone, almost too low in volume to be heard, I am becoming obsolete. Well, maybe you don't. I can't assume that everybody is just like me in this regard. However, you gotta be very careful about revealing your age to strangers, because it might form undesirable generalizations on the basis of that knowledge. But cheese, I want to get back to some of that stuff I was talking about before. Where was I? Oh yeah, politics. But first, this word from Mr. Vomit. It occurs to me also that sometimes some might think this particular topic distasteful. I mean, people go into automatic cringe mode when they hear anybody refer to vomit, right? Right? I mean, you've been like zoning out on this presentation ever since I said that word. How dull it is to pause to make an end. An idle king, I mete and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed. An unusually vehement rendition of Tennyson's Idylls of the King. How dull it is to pause to make an end. An idle king, I mete and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed. Or we could try this one more time. How dull it is to pause to make it end. An idle king, I mete and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed. Well, I can't quite get the note of vehemence out of my voice here. But anyway, yes, that hoard and sleep and feed, and the fat loads, they eat too much. I will have to destroy them. They are eating the entire food supply. There. That is better. Much better. So, let's see. Where was I? It has been said that to interview Elizabeth Dole is to interrupt her. Now they're picking on Liddy Dole. You know, she's the best bet for the Republican nomination in the year 2000. I mean, it's not going to happen, right? But, I mean, she'd be the one to beat. Because there's a lot of residual liking for Bob Dole, right? And everybody knows he'd be on the sidelines. Liddy, I think arguing. Very well, Dole, Bob. I'll take that into consideration. So, geez, according according to Bill Clinton in his first inaugural speech, actually his second inaugural, no, that was his first inaugural, let us resolve to reform our politics so that power and privilege no longer shout down the voice of the people. Right. I'm so cynical. I'm so cynical that everything that Bill Clinton says, everything that falls out of his stupid, fat, and fatuous maw, is drips with contempt for everything good and kind. I despise. Well, sorry, just kidding. Let's analyze that statement. Let us, like it's our fault, resolve, we have to actually gear ourselves up to reform our politics. Well, wasn't our responsibility? You're the president. Why don't you do it? It's like my girlfriend, right? I mean, she makes the garbage. She dirties all the dishes. She leaves the hair in the drain. But it's Mr. Klutz's duty to clean all this shit up. And, she just goes her girly way and leaves clothes everywhere and makes me pay the bills and whatnot. And she's got this exercise bicycle in the living room, and it just sits there, and she uses it to hang her clothing on. And like for the first time in 5 years, she laundered my shirts for me. It was like a big production, and on that basis, like I was supposed to kiss her ass. But anyway, let us resolve to reform our politics so that power and privilege no longer shout down the voice of the people. Well, actually, no, they work in more stealthy ways than that, Mr. President. They sort of sneak around behind your back, smoking cigarettes behind the garden wall and plotting to shout down the voice of the people. Like, they don't, walk around up and down the street with a megaphone saying, "Hello, we are the Hierophants." No. They do their business in a far more insidious fashion. Dissent isn't so much suppressed as merely stifled, not given its proper outlets. See, I could be doing this on national television. Bill Maher, move over. But no. It's because the Hierophants, the oligarchs, the plutocrats, they're afraid of what I have to say, which is nothing, basically. So there's that. And that's why I'm on cable television. This is my best show ever, if I say so myself, and I do. I'm the only one who says so. Therefore, keep listening. There's more good stuff. If I can, get my act together here and figure out what I was going to say next. Well, Pavlov couldn't have planned it better. Just hit my knee with a little hammer. Did you know that the median age for cultural creatives, such as myself, would-be transcendentalists of the 90s, is 42? See, I'm always like 1 or 2 years behind. It's just not fair. Of course, the average age of the American is getting younger and younger. I stopped being the average age of the American some time ago. But I am merely one of the largest cohorts ever born. I'm on the cusp. I was born January 2nd, 1957. So I can say, yes, I was born right around 1956. And I can also say, I was born on the first day of the space age. How ironic. Now here's something. the Brian D. Johnson in Maclean's magazine refers to Woody Allen as the little tramp of his generation. Hey lady, what about Jerry Lewis? Well, he was sort of like more like the little moron of his generation, but let's leave it at that. Oh yes, and the national mascot of the Winter Carnival in Montreal, Bonhomme Carnival, is new and improved. I guess they sort of shaved off several pounds of ice and sculpted him into a more credible cartoon mascot figure. Let us glean from Gary Wills's. Let me answer this. Hello? Hi, how you doing? Oh, not too bad. I'm waiting for a call from Dr. Karshma, my doctor. According to URI, I have to get another measles shot. That's what they require. So I'm calling Dr. Karshma to see if I can make an appointment to have such a shot, or if he deems it not necessary, whether I can just send over my medical forms that have to be returned to URI. But if he does deem it necessary, then I'll go and get the shot and have him fill out the forms and send them in. Yes. So I'm sort of waiting around for his call. But he's not going to be there in the afternoon, so if he doesn't call within half an hour, I'm just going to, like, mail this stuff. Well, no, it's actually kind of hard to get a hold of anybody because it's like summer school's over and stuff. But I will make an attempt to do so. All right. All right. Okay. I'll try. All right, honey? Okay. Is that all you wanted? If that's all you're asking, I think I can do it. All right. I'll see you then. Well, now I'm not in the mood to do any more shouting or screaming. So, I mean, it's kind of a bummer. It kind of puts the kibosh on my comedic intent. That's kind of a major drag on my skills as a raucous rockhound-tour, or a raucous rock-on-tour, or whatever you want to call it, a raucous raconteur. Well, anyway, as Gary Willis, quoting Dick Morris, said in the New York Review of Books of February 20th, excuse me, when Clinton faces political adversity, he switches into his politician mode. In this mindset, he doesn't spurn the process. He tries to win while still faithful to his basic principles. He becomes an astute and acute political warrior, says Dick Morris. I used to sense that he dislikes himself in this mode and didn't like me much either for embodying it. Psychiatrists call it splitting, when someone fails to integrate good and bad in a unified, coherent personality. In the trenches, I was a necessary evil. But once Clinton had been elected governor, my style seemed undignified. And Gary Wills goes on to say, when others think a candidate can't win, these people tirelessly invent new ways of making the candidate win. Morris completed the unholy trinity of polls, ads, and money. That would make 4 people, though, wouldn't it? Morris gave Bill Clinton a mechanics for turning cash into polls and polls into ads. But geez, anybody could have done that. FDR learned that one cannot govern a democracy without a continual cultivation of public support for one's measures. Duh, it's called consensus. Bill Clinton, nothing is too much to pay for a miracle. That's Dick Morris quoting Bill Clinton. The real Dick Morris scandal was the bottomless demand for cash in the technology of modern politics. It's the dark side of our whole political system. They love you, but simply because of that, watch out. One day they're going to say, he's been getting away with murder and now we're going to cut him down to size. They will, believe me, count on it, says Senator Cohen to Alan Simpson on journalists. You know, it's true too. Like when I listen to records, I do record reviews. I think, you know, geez, these guys, I've been giving them a lot of really good press, and I don't get any real, feedback from them about it. And well, I think it's about time I show them who's boss around here. So I'm going to pan them. These crumbs are on my drop dead list. I won't return their calls. Jeepers, Walter, what's the matter? Have we done something or said something that made you mad at us? Geez, we're sorry. Whatever it was, we're sorry. Listen, you saps, you've been getting away with murder for far too long, and now I'm going to cut you down to size, see? I am going to be one of the hunters. What are you going to hunt? People like you, says Alan Simpson's daughter, journalist, to Alan Simpson. Such a heartwarming thing to hear from the cradle of one's very own child. What do you want to be when you grow up, little boy? A hunter. And what are you going to hunt? I'm going to hunt you, Daddy. I'm going to hunt you down and show you like a mangy cur. Well, that's nice. Keep up the good work, Junior. Here's a gun. So, running amok was always one of Abbie Hoffman's fortes. And in doing so, he owed less to the high theories of Antonin Artaud than to a low tradition of Jewish Dadaism, whose brilliant warriors, not just the Marx Brothers and Lenny Bruce, but also Sid Caesar and Mel Brooks. Hey, what about Jerry Lewis? Once again, Jerry Lewis gets the shaft. A certain low tradition of Jewish Dadaism, whose brilliant warriors were determined to overturn middle-class rationality. In Abbie Hoffman's case, the political often was personal. There was a manic quality, in a clinical sense it turns out, to his overspilling charm. Mr. Raskin writes, I wasn't sure when he was acting, when he was for real, and when he was acting for real. Abbie Hoffman's life chronicles the self-destructive implosion of both the ascetic and ecstatic wings of the New Left. The early spirit of humanistic dissent gave way to nihilistic bravado, hatred of the United States and its traditions, and relentless Leninism with variously shifting vanguards of worker, psychedelic, rock and roll, minority, and student, all of which had given up on the people. The provocations on the right were great, but the New Left also has much to answer for, less to the right, which flourished on its excesses, than to the Democratic and liberal left, whose promise it betrayed, says John Reeder in his little recap of a recently issued biography of Abbie Hoffman. Abbie Hoffman, my hero. Anarchist, my hero. Anarchists get a bad rap, really. They get a lot of bad press. But, anarchy isn't just this sort of chaotic excess of liberty that everybody is sort of trying to paint it to be. No, anarchy is a philosophy all its own, except, of course, for the Stirnerite wing of the anarchists who disbanded because they thought that the notion of naming the anarchist group the Stirnerites was, in fact, not sufficiently anarchic enough. So, anyway, anarchy is a whole philosophy. It's sort of like libertarianism taken to its logical extreme, I reckon. But you know, people are like sheep. A quote that I've been sort of nurturing up for the past, several dozen years. The mass of men are sheeps for credulity and wolves for conformity. There's an awful lot of people who might otherwise have quite a liking for libertarianism, who are superstitious about it and won't have anything to do with it, perhaps rightly so, because they want to be sheep for credulity and wolves for conformity. They think that the two major political parties are somehow working in their interest. Ha! It's to laugh. And the Supreme Court recently struck down a decision that would have made fusion parties more viable. Fusion parties, of course, are parties which are sort of splinter parties of one of the two major parties. And if you vote for the fusion party, then the vote can also go to either the Democrats or Republicans. And it's a way of telling the Democrats and Republicans what portion of their constituency is interested in which particular aspect of the party plank. However, recently, the Supreme Court struck down the right of fusion parties to appear on the ballot. Of course, it's far too complicated for me to get into in any great detail, nor am I sure I entirely understand it. But in any event, now now one way in which we know that the two major parties are not necessarily operating in our best interest is the fact that our war on drugs is creating a prison state. Now, if you were faced with a virulent disease, what would be the more logical thing to do? A, lock the people up who have this disease in sanitariums and fill those sanitariums so that they're overcrowded to bursting while doing nothing whatsoever to research the causes of the disease. Or B, invest vast sums of money into treatment for this disease and to finding a cure of some kind for this disease. Or C, eliminate the causes of this disease insofar as as you're capable of doing so. Or D, a combination of A, B, and C. Well, the third one would be, C would be good, even B would be better, and D would be ideal, but A is not going to accomplish anything. But that's exactly what we're doing with this war on drugs. People take drugs because taking drugs is like an animal thing to do. All up and down the phylogenetic scale, animals seek to stimulate themselves with drugs of some kind, believe it or not. Elephants will drink beer, and so forth and on. Even dogs. But what we have to do is to indulge our animal natures to a certain degree without permitting the indulgence to become the rationale of our existences. Nobody complains about the fellow that has an occasional beer, and it should be that way with other indulgences as well. However, see, the problem isn't so much the drugs per se as the concentrated dosages of those drugs which people are encouraged to administer to themselves because of the highly illegal nature of those drugs. For example, if you were to make legal the chewing of coca leaves, then people would not be forced to find recourse in the highly refined powder form of cocaine or in crack cocaine. If you were to legalize poppy seed tea, people would not be forced to find recourse in synthetic opioids such as Percodan or in morphine or heroin, and so on down the line. If you were to legalize beer, then people would not be forced to find recourse in such substances as whiskey or brandy, highly potent spirit distillations of beer and wine. What are you saying? Hard liquor is legal? Ah, geez, well that goes one theory. There goes my theory there. If you were to legalize the eating of moldy bread, then people wouldn't have to dose themselves with LSD. What, it is legal to eat moldy bread? Geez, there goes another one of my pet theories. Well, anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is, every time the government has tried to suppress one type of drug, another one pops up and takes its place. I think the government should probably draw a line between which forms of drugs are tolerable, not acceptable, mind you, tolerable, and which are strictly intolerable, and give people a choice, as a consumer society. Or as Nietzsche says, mistrust those in whom the impulse to punish is strong. Now, a fellow named Dan Baum has written a book called Smoke and Mirrors, The War on Drugs and the Politics of Failure. Nixon emphasized the whole problem is really the blacks. The key is to devise a system that recognizes this while not appearing to. In cannabis society, there are 4 states of being: cool, groovy, hip, and square. A quote from a footnote. For the press, a drug epidemic was a pretty girl. A childhood drug epidemic was a pretty girl with a dog. Sooner or later, a democracy tells the truth about itself, said H.L. Mencken. Rehnquist. The only lawyer I know who would willingly defend the Sheriff of Nottingham, said John Mitchell, on our current head of the Supreme Court, Rehnquist. A continuing pattern of the war on drugs is the fusion of 2 unrelated or contradictory schemes into explosive policy. And so, the forfeiture of the 4th, 5th, and 8th Amendments and overcrowded prisons are the results. Don't fight the tape, says Jaffe, whatever the hell that means. When researchers offered various drugs to monkeys, the beasts wouldn't touch LSD after the first time, and would soon tire of marijuana and the opiates. For cocaine, however, the monkeys had an insatiable appetite, and if given the choice between cocaine and food, they would literally starve themselves to death ingesting cocaine. Can you believe that? For cocaine, however, they had an insatiable appetite. Congress, says Dan Quayle, in March of 1977, should definitely consider decriminalizing possession of marijuana. We should concentrate on prosecuting the rapists and burglars who are a menace to society. Well, that wasn't a very controversial thing to say in 1977. After one hit of coke, I feel like a new man. The only problem is, the first thing the new man wants is another hit of coke. What we do to our children, says Pliny the Elder, they will do to society. What we do to our children, they will do to society. Keep that in mind. So when we give them a teddy bear, they'll turn society into a teddy bear. If we try to sharpen their minds, then they'll try to sharpen our heads. If we give them a sharpened pencil, then they will turn the entire world into a sharpened pencil. Well, I'm not sure that makes much sense, but anyway. It is a fair summary of history to say that the safeguards of liberty have frequently been forged in controversies involving not very nice people, said Felix Frankfurter. The American people's sense of things, family, community, freedom, self-restraint, conventional morality, patriotism, light beer, cookouts, Disney World. That's William Bennett in a typically non-sequitorish litany of idiocy. Perhaps the most powerful influence of news, talk, and writing about problems is the immunity from notice and criticism they grant to damaging conditions that are not on the list. One of the problems that are not on the list is our botched and totally failed drug war. Again, I'm quoting at length from Smoke and Mirrors, The War on Drugs and the Politics of Failure by Dan Baum. In nearly 200 years prior to 1986, Congress had passed only 58 mandatory minimum sentences. 1915, sale of poisons in China. 1930s, murder of federal agent during a bank robbery. Post-World War II, treason and sedition. 1970s, skyjacking. But of course, once we got past 1986, then there was all sorts of mandatory minimum sentences, and it's called the drug exception to the Constitution. Mandatory minimum sentences should be found unconstitutional under the provision that prohibits cruel and unusual punishments. I'm sorry, I know I sound like a flaming liberal, or libertarian, or anarchist, or Sternerite, but mandatory minimum sentences are, when abused in this fashion, contrary to what the Founding Fathers had intended. It seems as though we've gone from an age of reason to an age of treason. Kind of a glib way of saying it, but no more communists? Well, let's invent an internal enemy. Let us demonize a scapegoat and then go all out. You see, the more illusory the enemy, the more repressive the methods which must be used to hunt it down. It's just like being in an English department. It's almost like something that Mao would say. The more illusory the enemy, the more ruthlessly he must be hunted down. But like I'm saying, it's just like being in an English department at a university. Like, the more trivial the studies, the more fiercely the turf must be defended. Or, as my friend Richard Smalley put it, there is no piece of turf so small that it can't be fought over. Well, Richard M. Nixon seemed to believe that Americans were more willing to believe television than their own experience. Scott Turow planted a tape recorder on a drug defendant's lawyer, turned to the defense attorney into an informant for the prosecution. So there's a big scandal there with Scott Turow. The South Central gang headquarters suspects forced in a raid to whistle the theme song from the Andy Griffith Show, which Los Angeles historian Mike Davis calls the Horst Wessels song of the LAPD, while being beaten with fists and flashlights at the station. Now, isn't that a bizarre thing? 32 South Central gang members were forced to whistle the theme song from the Andy Griffith Show while being beaten with fists and flashlights at the police station by the LAPD. The Pittsburgh Press found in 1991 that virtually all currency in the United States is tainted with enough cocaine to trigger a dog's response. How do you like that? Maybe they should just replace the means of currency with cocaine. Like 1 gram is worth $1,000. That would be one way of solving the drug problem, wouldn't it? I mean, nobody would want to snort up $1,000, and if they did, well, that's an anti-inflationary measure. It'll never happen. And then they could say, our cocaine is tainted with the residue of ground up $1 bills that somehow found their way in there. Well, away from the war on drugs and back to the war on politics. Basically, Bill and Hillary Clinton were said to have childish tempers and be capable of cold vengefulness. And it's such a pity. Bill Clinton, says Michael Kelly in The New Republic of February 10th, loves hope. He can't stop thinking about tomorrow. If you had his problems, you wouldn't linger over yesterday and today either. The disjunction between hope and deliverance had unfortunate results for the president, much as a rise in cynicism in the elections of 1994. We will know soon enough if Clinton is going to continue to talk large and act small. Michael Kelly also advises Bill Clinton to get a new metaphor concerning the bridge to the 21st century. Politics is a kind of theater, says Enrique Krauts. Politics is a kind of theater. Castro was as effective as Hitler at moving crowds until they became movable masses. Ronald Reagan, that Errol Flynn of B-movies. In the presidential debates, Reagan spoke with ease, projecting calmness, security, even benevolence. He was the hero who would save what could be saved of the American century. It was the best performance of his career, wrote Cabrera Infante. Worth an Oscar, but they only gave him as consolation prize the presidency of the United States. You know, if Eva Peron managed to become somebody, it's because of her intention never to forgive. Populism, caudillism, chauvinism, militarism, the 4 horsemen of the Latin American apocalypse, says Enrique Krauts. Well, I've never heard of before or since. I guess they just trot them out when South American politics needs some sort of commentary. Well, that Evita Peron movie sure entered the video shops mighty quick, didn't it? Did it not come out the second week of December? And now it's already in video stores the second week of July. Too much, man. Too much. Chris Rock goes beyond Eddie Murphy, beyond liberal guilt. Says Rick Marin in Newsweek. By the way, you ought to check out Chris Rock's special on HBO when you get a chance. It's remarkable, and he's entirely right. Yes, liberal guilt has pretty much vanished from the horizon. I guess that's one aspect of the 60s we can be glad to see the end of. Of course, it's been replaced with conservative rapaciousness, and I don't suppose we ought to be glad to see that disturbing phenomenon develop. Well, it looks like the doc isn't going to call me back. That's really too bad. I've been waiting around for an hour for him to call, but no dice. Ah, good iced tea. Hello? This is he. Can I ask you something? Is it possible for your representative to contact me via the U.S. Postal Service? I mean, in other words, can you send me the material in the mail rather than calling me on the phone? Okay, if you'd be kind enough to do that, then I'll be happy to supply you with any information you might like. Yes, I do not. About 35,000. Employee. Six 6177. No, wait until you guys contact me. Okay, you too. Bye-bye. Well, one of those telephone pests. You see, it, they make such a marginal living. It's really a pity. You know, the thing is, the ones you should really be leery of are the people who are trying to raise money for charity over the phone, especially if it's like some sort of highfalutin thing, because those folks are volunteers. It's no skin off their ass if they don't make any money, you know? And occasionally, though, they will work on a commission basis, but the only people who work on that kind of basis are like folks who like raise $1, $5, $10,000 at a pop, and who have a pre-selected telephone list of likely donors to work from. No, but you know, you ought to be as nice as possible to the kind of telephone solicitors who want to do surveys or, you know, get information about credit cards and stuff like that. Because they have to make a certain number of calls within, you know, per hour, and they don't get paid shit. They get like $6 an hour or something like that. And if they don't make their quota, they can be fired or not given any kind of raise, or they can their lives can be made quite miserable. So, Star Wars. Let's talk about Star Wars. The New Testament recast with Luke as the lightsaber-toting Messiah of the Jedis, Darth Vader as the Devil, and Supreme Lord of the Evil Empire, Obi-Wan Kenobi as St. John the Baptist, and the Force as the Star Wars Holy Spirit, says Tibor Krausch. So, well, as Matt Groening said, I can't believe we've been annoying people for this long. And indeed, I can't believe I've been annoying you for a straight hour. Yes, I have been talking for a full hour. Can you imagine doing that? Do you know how difficult it is to talk for one straight hour? Well, it is. In any event, as Aldrich Ames put it, I felt the KGB was being genuinely nice to me. Goes to show, huh? Some people will go anywhere for just a little affection and respect. Love is central to human existence. Oxytocin fosters a bond between mothers and children, helps fuel romantic love. You know that warm and cuddly, snuggly, poopy-poo feeling you get when you're hugging your sweetie? That's just a chemical reaction. Oxytocin, or oxytocin, or whatever. David Bowie is selling stock in himself, incidentally. Yeah, I'm going to sell stock in myself, too. I'll be worth one lousy penny. And if you don't buy 100 shares right now, I'm going to be sick. Wow, you know, that is so, man, that is so satirical. I finally got a joke for that, you know? I mean, it took like 7 months to think of something. The reason I'm like really involved in like this whole joke telling business now, like I'm gearing up for a show that I'm going to do in about 10 days or less. Let's see. No, it's about 10 days from now. 11 days. Okay, 11 days. It's just so weird because, like, you know, a lot of comedians get their ideas from sitting around and talking to other comedians and kind of like shooting the shit and, you know, having bull sessions and stuff. But I don't have any peers who can operate on my vast level of expertise, and therefore, you are my surrogates. Okay, so see, you can actually watch the evolution of a joke. You know, I've been unduly influenced by Lenny Bruce. So, and it may come out that way, initially. I'm going to sell stock in myself. 1 penny per share. You're going to buy 100 shares for $1 lousy dollar? Or do you want some trouble? Okay, so there's the joke. You see, and you were there when it was created. Trouble is, you know, I wouldn't have been able to create it if I hadn't put an arrow next to it. And I wouldn't have put an arrow next to it unless I had written it down. And I wouldn't have written it down unless I had read it. And I wouldn't have read it unless I read everything that I could possibly get my hands on. Now, the citation, Bowie sells stock in himself, was from The Economist of February 8th, 1997. So I am giving you invaluable insights as to how a comedian works. And for that, I hope you are duly grateful. However, I have been talking for virtually, 1 consecutive hour. Oh God, don't tell me that they're going to say that this is no good because it's network footage, or this is no good because it's variable speed footage. They've been complaining about my footage lately, and I hope they don't. So I'm going to put this, I'm going to stop this now, and Well, here we are with part 2 of our little production. Ironic, isn't it, that the Russian symbol, the national symbol of Russia is the bear. And to be found on all U.S. currency except one since 1794 or whatever, the eagle. So, but nobody ever does documentaries about the eagle. Eagles just aren't that photogenic. I mean, they're kind of like phoenixes or something. Please, no pictures. No pictures. Please, I asked you, no pictures. I'm going to have to take that camera and that film. How do I unload the film? Oh, never mind. Smash. Whereas bears, bears are like, oh, I'm goofy. I like to balance on big balls. Yeah, take my pictures. I don't care. Take a movie. Mr. Bear, why are you dancing? Because I have no wife. Ah, that makes sense. So, anyway, part 2. I don't know. Glad you all hung in there this far. If indeed you have. Don Sacklad. So, anyway, what's this? Oh, Train Spotting. A review of Train Spotting. The big sensational movie. Prior to that, the big novel. So, flat on blather, slim on substance, says Michael Kelly of Bill Clinton. By the way, did you know that 2% of murder victims in Washington, D.C. are white? Does that mean that 98% are black? Jeez, Maniz. Well, that's quite a large discrepancy. Wouldn't you say? Clinton, says Michael Kelly, in, Michael Kelly, I guess that would be the New Republic. But, can't find a citation for that. Is it possible that I actually omitted, if it was the New Republic, it would be the New Republic from 2/1797. See how good I am at this? I can do my archaeology. Clinton is not capable of giving a good speech in the technical sense. He is as pedestrian as a postman, and is under the impression that verbosity is the soul of wisdom. It is not merely that he lets no thought go unuttered. He lets nothing go unuttered. No notion, no nostrum, no whim, no fancy, no proposal, no plan, no prayer, no hope, no hype. Anything the President says is certain to be applauded by one side or the other, and the ambidextrous Clinton can find ways to be cheered by both. Mothers, children, teachers, corps, cops, World War II vets, Lincoln, any Roosevelt, democracy, community, technology, unity, diversity, God, man, woman, immigrants, civil rights, the environment, the 21st century. The new pork, call it micro pork. It benefits the individual voter and the individual politician at the expense of almost all voters or taxpayers, while doing little or nothing for the society as a whole. It is simply targeted vote buying, the creation of millions of individual quid pro quos. This is something I'm very interested in, personally. The micro pork. This is still Michael Kelly. This is still a White House that polls before breakfast and deeply loves the idea of symbolic achievement. Susceptible to the belief that the main trick in politics is to produce something that is close enough to an achievement to fool enough of the people enough of the time. Well, how interesting. Sentient middle-class women perceive the triangular path of circulation that enforces patriarchal powers being routed through them but never ending in them. Okay, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I thought I'd throw it in. Roger Simon was quoted as saying, "Primaries are death for presidential incumbents facing re-election. Ask Bush, Carter, Ford, and Johnson. Primaries sap your resources, and you have to spend time talking to your base voters exclusively. You have to appeal to your activist wing and pandering to your activist wing in the primaries can doom you with swing voters in the general election. Jesse Jackson visited the Oval Office nearly a dozen times, and the meetings were as delicate and stylized as the mating of cranes. This is in response, I suppose, to his plans to challenge Clinton in the 1996 presidential primaries, which, of course, never happened. But if it had, excuse me, history might have been different. I mean, if Jesse Jackson had the will to run a third-party candidacy, that would have really thrown the election for a loop. He would have drawn off the entire left wing, practically, of the Democratic Party. All along it was Jesse Jackson who was the real threat and not Ralph Nader. But fortunately, for Bill Clinton at least, if not for the country at large, Jesse Jackson did not, in fact, go through the trouble of having his name put on all 50 state ballots and the District of Columbia. Jesse Jackson, the altered state into which Morris and Clinton seem to have gotten themselves, has some historic importance. It led them to conduct presidential politics in an overheated, rule-breaking way that is likely to have a lasting impact. New markers in the area of spending, and therefore fundraising, of manacling the candidates' every word and deed to poll results, and allowing the political exigencies of the moment to invade policymaking. Selling Clinton on a vast national advertising campaign in the summer of 1995, just after triangulation had been achieved. The key is to advertise your positions only if the public agrees with them, says Dick Morris. Something I should keep in mind, actually. I've got a live show coming up pretty soon. By the time you hear this, of course, it will have passed. It will have been 2 weeks gone. But hey, I might as well advertise in advance, right? I'll have another live show in September. Let's see, when is that going to be exactly? That's the problem. I don't know. Do I really want to get up and look at the calendar? I guess I do. This is important. On Saturday, September 6th, in Providence, Rhode Island, at AS 220 at 115 Empire Street, I will be doing a show. Curtains rise at 9 o'clock. Admission, as far as I know, is $3, although this might be the big freebie that they throw every year. Let's hope so. Last time we had a freebie there, I think it was in, I don't know, 95, 94 or 95. The place was packed, wall to wall. See, now my problem is, I talk too fast. I know I do. But sometimes I have so much that I want to get in to the presentation that, well, I can't but help but talk too fast. If unprecedented tens of millions of dollars were going to be spent on ads, and if these ads were going to be paid for with soft money, and so couldn't be explicitly candidate promoting, then an elaborate polling operation had to be set up that would find out what Americans wanted for their government, so that the ads could then promise that Clinton would give it to them. In this way, the imperatives of the ad buy began to drive government policy. In other words, it's the society, stupid. Class warfare doesn't work in America, Dick Morris told the president. He fired on the idea of developing a democratic social issue agenda that would be ambitious enough to answer voters' concerns about values, but not so ambitious as to require expensive new programs, encouraging people to look to the government to address the nation's problems, while promising to cut government back. Perfect plainness of speech allied with perfect nobleness. as Matthew Arnold said of the Iliad. It is the fate of most new and valuable insights to be enthusiastically developed beyond the limits of certainty or even of probability, said Bernard Knox, cited by Peter Green. If endless, fresh layers of meaning constitute a sure mark of a classic, another is the work's ability to retain its attraction through the inevitably distorting lens of translation. Well, I don't know about if it's the society stupid would pass that test. Anyway, alexithymic means no words for moods. It's a type of executive. An extreme reality-based cognitive style, an impoverished fantasy life, a paucity of inner emotional experience, a tendency to engage in stereotypical interpersonal behavior, and a speech pattern characterized by endless, trivial, repetitive details. They may use work as a type of drug. So that corresponds to your boss. Watch out. That's all I can say. Indeed, I may have already said too much. He could split hairs as well as rails, said Robert Bruce about Lincoln. Now, Lincoln was no workaholic. He liked a joke or two. I'm sure he had a very active fantasy life. Yeah, there, Mr. Lincoln. America is far more than a place. It's an idea, says Bill Clinton, as cited in the Weekly Standard of February 17th. Well, yeah, I guess so. Or as Larry Flint put it, the man who controls pussy controls the world. Although, not strictly related as ideas. Evil is everywhere and always the work of individual and identifiable men. It is the responsibility of historians to keep that truth in mind. Victims of wrongdoing have always threatened their oppressors with a judgment of history. To withhold that judgment is to withhold the only justice that the living can render the dead. Aww. That's a nice. Bill and Newt's souls are not for sale. The devil already holds an option. Okay, very interesting. Particularly in light of the recent shakeout and near betrayal of Speaker Newt. Of course, I am talking on July 23rd, so this isn't actually recent news. It's funny how things that happened back in February begin to actually resurface 6 months later, so that howsoever behind the times we are, we're actually on the cutting edge. We have the background notes to current events right here at our fingertips. I am using the royal we. Eric Brindell has moved to a high-up job in the Murdoch organization, according to the New Republic. Now you may remember Eric Brindell as the former aide to Senator Moynihan, who was caught buying heroin by undercover agents in Washington, D.C., who somehow managed to become the editorial editor of the New York Post because he had influential friends in high places and was not loath to call upon them for favors. By the way, Gaddafi calls Bill Clinton a decent, peace-loving guy. Bill Clinton's governing style is characterized by wonkish laundry lists, focus grouped to razor-sharp precision, and the National Review refers to this as micro-liberalism. Well, yeah, there is, especially the liberal part, is very micro. Medicine should be about relieving pain, not passing it on from Washington. whatever that means. And so we wind down to the end, inevitably, like waves beating against the shore. The tactically driven first strike mentality of the Clinton camp is still shaped by the Lee Atwater legacy, Robin Toner astutely observes in an issue of the New York Times Book Review dated February 16th. Isn't this a bitch? We're still in the middle of February here. Research has shown that the names of foreigners immigrating to this country were mostly mutilated on the ship registers upon departure from their native land, not upon arrival in the United States. You know what that means? That story that your grandfather told you about how his name was changed from Kowanowski to Smith by the ignorant, illiterate immigration officers at Ellis Island 75 years ago, more than likely is not true. More than likely, it was the ignorant emigration officer from his native land who changed his name from Dombrowski to Dumbo the Elephant Ears once upon leaving native Poland. But of course, one wouldn't leave Poland by ship, since Poland is largely, at least, a landlocked country. I know for a while there they had the Danzig corridor, but I don't think that's the case anymore. You know, the Atwater personality, his hunger for the limelight, his almost preternatural energy level, his ability to both shamelessly use and utterly inspire the aides around him,